Hey everyone, today it's Q&A number 18. Shalom everybody, welcome to Beit Tefillah and Q&A number 18. If you're new to this channel, this is where we take questions from Facebook, maybe the YouTube comments or wherever they come from, email, and we put them into these Q&A videos. And if you have questions, you can post below in the comments, and if we use your question, we'll keep you anonymous, of course. Okay, so let's hear the first question from my wife Betsy, who is speaking for the people asking.
The people that claim to have seen Jesus during near-death experience, are they lying?
Well, I don't think they're lying. I believe people think they're seeing something when they're near death, as people can imagine or see all sorts of things at that time. We were with a very good family friend when he died in his bed earlier this year. And the morning that he died, when we went over to be with him, he was smiling and he was holding up his hand. And when Betsy asked him what he was doing, he said, "I'm cleaning a catfish." You know, and there's a lot of healthy, normal people in all walks of life that swore that they've seen things like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, or Elvis. Are they lying? Most of them, I don't believe so. And it's hard to tell what the mind conjures up at times, whether it's real or it's misidentification or whatever. But no, I don't believe that most people, when they're near death, would be lying.
It makes me think about in Tanakh when it talks about sleeping being death and the dreams that we have while we're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And when people talk about seeing their loved ones after going down the tunnel experience, it makes me think about the witch of Endor calling up Samuel for Saul.
Right. I mean, there's something going on there. You know, just like, can you commit adultery? Could you steal? Yes, you're not supposed to, but that's something you could do. And Elohim said, don't do it. Elohim also said, don't consult with the dead. And I don't think that he would have warned us against that if it was something that we couldn't do. Like, he's not going to say, well, don't flap your wings and fly to the moon. Well, that's not possible, so we weren't warned against that. But this is something we were warned against. So there's something. We know there's something.
And then there's the feeling of deja vu. And then there's also the thing that I think about sometime, if a person sleeps the sleep of death and then wakes up for a new kingdom, or whatever different religions say happens to our spirits after we're dead, and even people who believe in reincarnation, to know whether you're doing a deja vu from a past life.
Yeah.
Which wasn't something I ever really believed in, but when we're talking about things we don't know in religion.
Well, there's so much we can't know. We're only, you know, awake and aware in this life. We don't know what happens in the next life. So, you know, and some people say, oh, I was near death, you know, and I saw my dad who had died years ago. Well, my dad died 6 years ago, and I see him in my dreams at night a lot. So, you know, we don't know what happens to the body exactly when it's near death, and we don't know what people are seeing, whether it's real or whether it's something deep in our psyche, you know.
And then when you're talking about being near death, often that's in a situation where you've been given medication.
Yeah,
and even if it's not a medication, people who do mushrooms, from what I have heard and read, report similar experiences depending on whether they're doing like the trickster mushrooms, or if they're doing an ayahuasca, or I guess certain herbs give certain fairly reliable experiences. Not speaking from experience, didn't really study it, just talking about what I've heard.
Well, you hear about some of the Native Americans, you know, and they would do different things, and I don't know if it was peyote or what it was, and they'd find their spirit animal or whatever, and we don't know what kind of things they were seeing, you know, back then. And a lot of times some of these recipes have been lost. Some of them were handed down, and they're, you know, they're available today. You know, a lot of these same plants are there, but we don't know some of the stuff in the past what they did. For example, Greek fire. You hear about that, you can read about that. Today we don't know what it is. And it wasn't a drug, it was something they used in warfare, but that's just an example of something that was mixed up, that was used, that was lost.
I never heard of Greek fire.
Yeah, so that's all pretty interesting.
And then when you want to throw out the Native Americans and say, well, that was, you know, that's why the missionaries came for them, we have to stop and realize that I've heard that Native American language is recognizable in Hebrew.
Right. Well, the Cherokee, I believe, you know, don't you know, quote me on this, but I think the Cherokee were one of the few, if not the only one, that did have a written language, and it was very similar, from what I've heard, to Hebrew. And the Cherokee may have been the Syro-K, which Josephus had wrote about, that they were one of the 12 tribes that got away when the Romans came in. And I don't know the validity to those stories, but that's just some stuff that I've heard. Yeah.
And then when we're talking about whatever Greek fire is, it makes me think about the third eye and the cerebral spinal fluid, and the things that happen. I think there is a culture who feels whether a person is warm at their head or at their feet, determining which direction their spirit went.
Yeah, I remember.
And I don't know if that has to do with the cerebral spinal fluid, which is apparently circulating through our bodies and able to be conserved and able to be raised according to choices made when the moon is in the sign that you were born in, which is not really a sign, but an area of the sky. And I would like to write that off, but we know when the tides come in. And
yeah, the sun and the moon have a great effect on the earth and many organisms on this earth, and you know, it has to do with triggering mating, and has to trigger hibernation. And so, you know, the moon and the sun, they have a great deal of pull and influence on the earth, and who's to say that a lot of the planets don't as well? Some of that we don't understand, and a lot of that has been relegated to the pagan bin, but so many different religions around the world believe that it has something to do with it, and we don't know exactly what our Creator set up. So why I wouldn't live by that, because I don't do the whole astrology thing, there may be a little bit of truth and validity in some of that.
And it may just be one of those other religions, because, you know, there's the Western theory of astrology, and then there's the sidereal, which is not based on 12 equal around that circle.
Yeah.
But the sidereal gives way for 13 areas in the sky, which includes the healing Ophiuchus, I think.
Yeah.
And then some of them are smaller, like Ophiuchuses, and they overlap a little bit more and make it more realistic. So you know, there's so much added into religion because of tradition and because of beliefs, and so that opens the discussion to the third eye.
Yeah.
Which I would have just poo-pooed, except for when I was going through divorce and custody situations with my son and praying for him to grow up to pursue Creator. I spent a lot of time fasting and praying, days and months. And that did give me experiences that made me believe that I was seeing spiritual direction, which is said to happen when the calcification that comes on our pineal glands because of fluoride and other, man-made fluoride, not the kind that Creator created. But so that's a good question, and I don't know. I think you did a good job answering it. I don't think anybody really can know.
No, I mean, we seem to cover a lot of material, which is but yeah, there's a lot of unknowns out there, and you know, I don't want anybody watching this video and thinking, wow, they're sure dabbling in a lot of stuff. No, not really. What we're doing is studying a lot of the different things, because there's a lot of truth out there that for years modern religion, or even, you know, modern religion, when I'm saying like the last 500 years, has kind of got rid of a lot of stuff, or just labeled it as being from the devil, and kind of steamrolled and blew a lot of it off, when we're not really sure how much stuff, like so much stuff that the Mayans did was lost, and they had all these codices, and a lot of the old religious zealots that came through when the Mayans were there, they just burned all that stuff. And so much of that was lost. And they had better, more accurate calendars than we do today. They just were so far advanced in what they knew from studying the solar system. And, you know, our Creator created all that, and He put all that in motion for a reason. And it's sad that a lot of that information was lost. But, yeah, it's a very good question. There's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that we can't know, but that's why we keep studying and read a little bit here and there. And just because you're reading something like that, it shouldn't be off limits, because everything should be investigated. And if it's not from Elohim, or if it's not real, then get rid of it, you know. But there's a lot that we can learn just from looking at the things that Elohim created.
Shame on us for not thinking, if people are lying about Santa Claus, we better check the New Testament sooner. And once you have your New Testament pulled out from under you, then you just kind of have to be suspect of everything.
You do. You have to question everything.
So we really do study a lot of different things, and we talk about a lot of different things as we're going through our days.
Yeah. Anyway, let's hit the next question.
What are your thoughts of the title Elohim? Is it plural or not?
I think I covered this on an older Q&A video, but I get asked this question a lot, so I'm going to put it in this one, especially when it's combined with the next question. The Hebrew word Elohim doesn't mean God. It actually means mighty one, or one with power and authority, just as our Creator made Moses to be in a position of power, of authority, or authority over Pharaoh. Elohim can mean mighty ones, plural, but it's usually understood to be grammatically singular. For example, Bereshit bara Elohim are the first three words in the Tanakh in Genesis 1:1, and when it's translated, it means in the beginning created Elohim. Now, if Elohim were meant to be plural, as some people think it is they think it's they created, the verb would have been conjugated to create. It would have been conjugated to read baru. Instead, it's bara, which is past tense singular. So there we have the very first verse in the Tanakh, which is using Elohim as singular. So there you go. Pretty simple. Okay, this next question, as I said a second ago, is good to follow the one that was just answered, because a lot of times they use that example that they think of Elohim being plural to go ahead and run into this next question.
Have you ever made a video regarding Genesis 1:26, which states, "Let us make man in our image and likeness"? I think this is one of the reasons people are saying that Jesus, or Yeshua, was present with God at creation. Please explain. Okay.
All right, now I've never done a video on this topic, and I should probably do a standalone video, but for now we're just going to answer it in this Q&A. It's been coming up quite a bit lately. Let's read the verse they're talking about from Genesis 1:26, where Elohim said, "Let us make man in our image according to our likeness." Now there's a couple good theories about this. The first one is that Elohim was talking to his angels, or his heavenly messengers, or the cherubs, when he said us. Now nobody is real sure what the definition of a cherub is. There's no really good examples of what it is. You know, they talk about that cherubs were placed on top of the Ark of the Covenant, for example, and there's a few verses that mention it. And the plural of that is cherubim. But most biblical scholars agree that it's some form of heavenly being. There's a couple other verses in early Genesis that also mention this us. Let's read a couple of them we'll start with Genesis 3:22. "And Yehovah Elohim said, See, the man has become like one of us, to know good and evil." And two verses later, it's talking about the cherubim there. In Genesis 3:24, "And he drove the man out, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life." And we can hear this us part one other time, this during the Tower of Babel incident, where Elohim said, as recorded in Genesis 11:7, "Come, let us go there and confuse their language so that they do not understand one another's speech." So once again, this us may be referring to Elohim and his messengers or angels. And a different theory about the us, which to me isn't as valid, but it's still very interesting. It goes a little bit like this. We know that Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And we know he commanded the earth to bring forth plants and animals. as we can read in Genesis 1:11. And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the plant that yields seeds, and so on and so forth. And in Genesis 1:12, and the earth brought forth grass, the plant that yields seed according to its kind, and so on. And then in Genesis 1:24, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth the living being according to its kind, livestock and creeping creatures and beasts of the earth according to its kind. Now, let me stop here and say, we just read that Elohim said, let the earth bring forth. Then in the very next verse, we can hear what happened in Genesis 1:25, where it states, and Elohim made. So he said, let the earth bring forth, but then it states that Elohim made the beast of the earth according to its kind, the livestock according to its kind, and all that creep on the earth according to its kind. And after all of that, in the very next verse, in Genesis 1:26, it states, and Elohim said, let us make man in our own image. And then we can read a little bit further ahead in Genesis 2:7, and Yahuwah Elohim formed the man out of the dust from the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. So the theory is that quite possibly Elohim commanded the earth, and the earth obeyed. After all, man was formed out of the dust of the earth. Elohim spoke to the earth and said, let us make man. Maybe the earth and Elohim was the us. Don't know.
Speaking of things in the dirt, it opens a can of worms that's pretty interesting.
No pun intended.
I did intend it.
Oh, you did. Pun intended then.
You're very alert. Yeah. Thinking of us, what about the male-female side of Lord? Capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, which Yahuwah, Yahweh, Yehovah, depending on how people say it. I've heard that word has a feminine and a masculine side to it, which if you have taken Latin, you know about that. I think other languages do that too.
Yeah, and that's another thing that mirrors that's really interesting too is first we can read where Elohim created Adam and in his likeness, and then he pulled Eve out of Adam. So maybe that our Elohim does have the male and female aspects, and Adam was created that way. After all, we just got done reading where he said, let us make man in our image. So maybe that's what happened. So maybe this us is sort of this dual aspect of Elohim. So I guess that could be a third theory too. I've never really heard that mentioned except rarely. So yeah.
Kind of makes me think of that yin-yang circle thing, the black and white paisley.
Kind of.
That's what I always thought of it as, but it's all one thing, and it gives balance. And it also brings to mind that Creator says that he created darkness and I want to say
light,
deception, but the
evil,
verse that he tempts too.
Right.
Hasatan.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if there's light and darkness, and if there's good and evil, it's different sides of that. So yeah, true. Okay, next question.
Does Scripture forbid cremation?
Well, this is quite a common question. I get asked this quite a bit, but there's nothing in Torah that I've ever read that forbids cremation. Elohim said, as stated in Genesis 3:19, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So clearly Elohim said we are to return to dust, and in my opinion, cremation just gets us there quicker. But to answer the question, no. The Torah neither favors nor forbids
just
cremation.
Bury me at the root of a tree.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, and that's a whole other topic that I think we'll spare him for this video. But yeah, that's what I would pick. I don't want to be stuffed in a box in the ground, and I don't know about being burned up either, but yeah, I wouldn't mind just being shoved in a hole and plant a tree over me.
Yeah, because Tanakh talks about that being the enemies around them that were doing the cremation. Yeah. And so then...
And Korah was pulled into the ground and burned up with his family and that too.
He was burned. I thought it just opened up and swallowed him.
Well, I thought it said, didn't it say it opened up and there was like this fiery...
I don't remember that.
Maybe it didn't. But... Maybe I'm just thinking of like Dante's Inferno or something. I don't know. But the ground did swallow him up, but yeah.
And then it may have been that it's a social political thing in Tanakh. I mean, if we're going to tease apart how Tanakh compares the New Testament, we're going to have to tease apart what Tanakh has to say about other cultures around them.
Sure. I mean, there were other things that were hinted to in there, but they weren't really expanded. For example, don't boil a young kid in his mother's milk. That just kind of was stuck in there to where you're reading it and you're like, wait, what? And so, yeah, that must have been a custom of the heathen, as some people talk about, like a fertility rite. So, yeah, some of these things were just undoubtedly customs, like covered in a video or two ago about some of the prophets that they customarily bowed in a certain direction when they prayed, or prayed a certain number of times. That's nothing we're commanded, and you can't add to the Torah. And I don't think Catholics promote cremation. I think they like burial, but that's a religious thing or a custom. So we can't just look at a custom and say it's something that God commanded, because that's adding to the word, which we know is a sin. Okay, next question.
As most meat suppliers and butchers sell halal meats, is it forbidden to eat those meats, seeing as they have been slaughtered with a religious blessing that is contrary to Yah's commands? If this is the only supply of meat we can get, what do we do in this case? Do we stop eating all meat, or do we ask Yah to bless this meat and remove all foreign worship praise?
Well, as for the butchers that sell this halal meat that has been blessed with people praying to Allah, let's consider the following. In English, we say God. In Hebrew, they say Elohim. And in Arabic, it's Allah. Different words for the same being, for the same creator. We all believe in the creator of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Christians think somehow that Allah is a false god, and that by saying prayers to Allah where they butcher animals is sacrificing to idols. It's not. Now, we looked for a quick Google explanation of this, and this is what we found real easily, so I'm going to quote them. Invoking the name of God, or Allah, at the moment of slaughtering is sometimes interpreted as acknowledgement of God's right over all things and thanking God for the sustenance He provides. It is a sign the food is taken not in sin or in gluttony, but to survive and praise Allah as the most common blessing, Bismillah, or in the name of Allah the greatest. So there you go. They're just saying all that, praying, and asking for God's blessing. That's all it is. Okay, next question.
What are you doing for Sukkot this year?
I don't know, baby. What are you doing? We've been asked this by a few people recently. The thing of it is, we haven't heard about any Sukkot being held by people that believe like us anywhere, let alone in our area. So we decided just to have a private Sukkot this year. We'll see what's going on next year, but we've been far too busy to think about planning one to have people at right now. And so that brings us into our last question, where people might ask, Betsy, is it your fault that I haven't been making very many videos?
Yes.
No.
Well, it kind of is. I was blessed this year to inherit a home from a very dear friend and neighbor.
Yeah.
And so we've been busy, because not only did I inherit it, but I'm also the executrix of the estate.
Yeah.
And so we've been busy going to the courthouse and talking to the attorney and paying bills and cleaning. And my dear friend smoked in that house for years, so we've been scrubbing and trying to make sure that the people that he would want to have his things get it.
Yeah.
And so it kind of is my fault. But we would rather blame Elohim for blessing us. Yeah,
it was definitely a wonderful blessing, and it's a lot of work, but this is it's wonderful, And we've been very busy, and we're still doing a lot of talking.
While we're cleaning and driving. That's why we have the thoughts that we had at the beginning of this, because we're tossing around ideas that we've heard and thinking about it, and
listen to a lot of different videos, and a lot of different people say, hey, what about this and that, so we'll talk about it. And so we're still studying, and we're still coming up with ideas for scripts. Just don't have a whole lot of time to work on it right now. There's one really good video that we're working on. It's a long script, and that's in edit right now. We haven't filmed it yet. Hope to get that done in another month or two. That'll be a good one coming out. But trying to do at least one a month. I think, this makes number 9, and we're in September by the time this video will be released. So it's about all we have time for right now. But yeah, we've been blessed. We've been blessed. It's we've been married for a little over a year now, and it's just been wonderful. Elohim has truly given us the desires of our hearts, and we are very grateful.
Can I say just one more thing?
Sure.
Two.
Two things?
Yeah.
That's it?
Okay. Not only that, but we've been starting plants and trying to prepare for Shemitah.
Yeah.
That's taken some planning.
That's another biggie. Yeah, a lot of gardening in the midst of all this estate work.
And it's not really gardening like we would imagine the gardening to be either. It's kind of nursing plants along and figuring out the soil where we're trying to plant it.
Yeah.
So be encouraged if you're struggling planning for Shemitah. Just keep praying for the direction for that.
That's good. I'm glad you remembered that. Yeah.
And I also have been thinking about people who are talking to your families, or your families are discovering that you've compared the New Testament with Tanakh and found glaring disagreements.
Yeah.
Just keep hanging in there, and don't worry too much about the hard spells when you go through it. Just keep letting your family know you love them, that you're sticking with what you believe God has shown you at that time. And remember, most of us used to be really strong Christians and really sticking up for the things that we thought were truth then. And we haven't finished comparing the Tanakh to
the
what?
Torah, or to what Elohim has created. But yeah, that's good. I'm glad you said that. Talking to a good brother yesterday who's having a hard time dealing with his parents recently finding out. Raised a good, strong Christian just like us, and when you have got to approach your parents and just say, I don't believe in your Jesus anymore, I don't do the New Testament, that's rough. So I'm not going to mention his name, but you know who you are, brother, and we're praying for you. And we know it's tough. So
and to the Christians that watch this, and there surely are some, because you get some thumbs down.
Oh, yeah.
Realize that this is hours of studying, and just because we can't go back to believe in Santa Claus doesn't mean we don't love the people who told us about Santa Claus.
Sure.
And so I try to think of it from the perspective of our parents who invested hours. They gave us the drug problem that we joked about in church because they drug us to church.
Yeah, that's it.
But having compassion for those people is good.
Yeah.
Sounds like the school bus is gone.
Somebody was drug off to school. Anyway, that's all we have for this video. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for being a part of Beit Tefillah. Please sub to our channel yet if you haven't done so. A shout out and a shalom to all who are yisra'el and are scattered worldwide in the dispersion. Everybody be blessed and have a wonderful day.